All right, so continuing now, chassidus. We have covered the first 5 chapters, and where we left off, we were speaking about Mashiach. We wanted to understand Mashiach better because understanding Mashiach better would help us to understand chassidus better, and that is the whole objective here, is to understand chassidus. Hence the name Kuntras Inyana Shel Teres Chassidus, a booklet about what is chassidus. And let's just jump into the text because the text explains why we were talking about Mashiach. Okay. Chapter 6. Ka'amar la'el, as stated above, mischara shel hafatzas chassidus bias Mashiach, that through the reward for spreading out chassidus, which is the coming of Mashiach, neida esmohusa, we can know the essence of chassidus. And I want to reiterate that the term reward here is not like reward that we often think of where it's an arbitrary reward, where it's an extrinsic motivation, but rather a true cause and effect reward where it's an intrinsic motivation, where the result of the work itself generates its own reward, in the true sense of schar mitzvah mitzvah. So hafatzas mayanis results in Mashiach. So therefore, we said if we'll study Mashiach better, we'll understand chassidus better. What is Mashiach? Well, if you'll be able to answer that, you'll be able to answer a little bit better what is chassidus. And we said that Mashiach is all about yechida. A lot of things are going to happen, marvelous things are going to happen in the world when Mashiach comes, but all of those are a teitzah, a manifestation of the single idea of Yechidah. And without trying to define Yechidah, which is a very lofty concept, let's just let it suffice to say at this point, Yechidah is a term which we are going to be speaking about over and over and over again at length in this discourse. So for now, we'll just, without trying to translate it or define it, we'll just say Yechidah. Okay? So Mashiach is about Yechidah. Okay, let's continue. Kol achidushim shechsidus chidsha. All of the innovations that chassidus brought about, what are they? Namely, bat torah, in terms of torah, kel havas chelak hasayd shabali de giloi, which one of the main innovations of chassidus in the realm of torah is that it revealed the chelak hasayd, the Kabbalistic or the esoteric. It allowed it to be expressed. It gave it a language. And we spoke about all these 4 aspects of chassidus back in chapter 1, in the very first chapter. And I believe this was feature number 4. The innovation that chassidus brought to Torah was that it gave the side of Torah a language to be revealed. And why is that an expression of Yechidah? As I said, Yechidah is this idea that we're going to be returning to over and over and over again. But maybe at this point, let's just say Yechidah means the most basic, fundamental, essence is the word that we're going to use, essence. But what something is, what it is, not what it does, not the way it presents itself, not the way that we experience it subjectively, but what it is, what it really is. And when you get down to the essence, when you get down to what something actually is, what you find is that all of the external trappings that we use to define something, they sort of fall away. This is not a mashal that the Rebbe uses here, so I'm hesitant to use it. But I just think it's a really good mashal. And even if it's not a good mashal, it's an opportunity to tell a really geschmack maisa, a really cool story about the Rebbe. Is that how you translate geschmack maisa in English in 2020? I think a cool story. When the Rebbe had his heart attack, on Yom Tov and Shmini Atzeres. This is back in the 1970s, just to set the historically when this occurred. So they flew in a cardiologist, an expert from Chicago, Dr. Ira Weiss. And the Rebbe, Dr. Weiss was trying to explain to the Rebbe what had happened to his heart. He said, when there's that damage to the heart, so it damages the elasticity of the muscle cells. And when Dr. Weiss tells the story, he looks back and says, I was explaining it to the Rebbe. I knew that Rebbe was an intelligent person, so I was explaining it the way I'd explain it to any intelligent person. But he says, looking back on it, I was explaining to him. So he's explaining to the Rebbe, well, what happened is, it damaged the muscle cells in the heart. Now they lost their elasticity, and the heart needs to pump, so it needs elasticity. So he says, the Rebbe says to me, this is 1977, the Rebbe says, well, could you use stem cells? So Dr. Weiss, who was an expert in his field, which is precisely why he had been brought in, he said, I wasn't even really sure what the Rebbe was talking about. Stem cells, what are stem cells? So basically, he said the Rebbe was so far ahead of the experts in their field. Dr. Weiss was an expert in his field. And the Rebbe was so far ahead in experimental, cutting-edge knowledge, and that the Rebbe was asking him, well, what about the stem cells? Can you use the stem cells? So this was back in the 70s, and the Rebbe was already, way decades ahead of where medicine was at that point. But what's the idea of stem cells? So anyways, that's the Geschmack HaMaaseh. The idea of a stem cell is that it's a cell that can become any cell. So, what is it? Well, whatever it becomes. So again, this is just my mashal, and I don't know if it's perfect. It probably isn't. But, maybe a crude metaphor for us, for yechida, for essence, at least in the physical realm, would be like a stem cell. It can become any cell. It is no cell, and it's not a particular cell. So it's not any cell, but it's every cell. So think about yechida or essence like that. It isn't anything in particular, but it's everything. So think about it like this. Normally in Torah, you have pshat, remez, drush, soid. That would be like, metaphorically, you have muscle cells, and you have maybe, the cells of different, organs or skin or bones, and there are different types of cells. So you have pshat, that's one type of Torah, and you have remez as another type, drush as another type, soid as another type. But then you have the yechida of Torah, which, from the perspective of yechida, it could become anything, and it's nothing in particular. It's not pshat, it's not remez, it's not drush, it's not soid, but it's all of them. In other words, the rule of soid, the definition of soid is it's secret. Soid means secret. It's esoteric wisdom, and it can't be revealed. And if it can be revealed, then it's not esoteric, right? Isn't that sort of the definition of esoteric? But from a perspective of yechida, those rules don't apply. It can be esoteric and it can be revealed at the same time. And so when chassidus, which is synonymous with yechida, reveals itself in Torah, what happens is the rules of categorization become defied. And that which is, by definition, a secret, can now be revealed and no longer a secret, and yet there's no rule saying that it can't be that way, because it's nothing and it's everything. I don't know if that's it's a deep paradox. So normally the rules are soid is soid, and that's what makes it soid. And yet, from a perspective of yechida, when yechida reveals itself through Torah, so soid could be soid, but but it's not a side, meaning it's not a secret. You can take the secrets of the Torah and reveal them. That's what's funny about it. It's like, how are these secrets of the Torah? You can go on the internet and any Joe Schmo can now go learn Pnimius HaTorah. So how are they secrets? A secret isn't just something. A true secret isn't just something that people don't know. True secret is something that's unknowable. I can go online and I can look up medical journals, but it doesn't mean I can understand them, right? But so they're not secret, meaning the information's not being hidden from me, but it's not accessible. I don't know how to read it. And yet chassidus, what does chassidus do? Especially chassidus Chabad. Chassidus Chabad, which is Chochmah Bina Das, the Alter Rebbe's style, is you're taking the secrets of the Torah, not only you're making them available to people, but you're explaining it in ways that they could understand it. So it's not just like you have to be an expert, that only a doctor could understand a medical journal. But it's like WebMD. Anybody can go to the site and they can read it and they can understand it. So it's taking things that used to be secrets and making it not only available, but actually accessible. Not just that you can find the information, but you could find it and understand it. So that's sort of like defying the very definition of soid. All right, but that's what happens when Yechidah is revealed in Torah. All right, then the next thing, Ba'avedas ha'adam. Let's continue in the text. Ba'avedas ha'adam, in terms of personal development. Let's translate it like that. Those were features 2 and 3, I believe, respectively, of the list of 4 that we had in the beginning of chapter 1. And both of those are demonstrations of Yechidah as well, because, think about it like this. The first one, going lifnim mishuras hadin, doing more than the letter of the law. If you are following nefesh, ruach, neshama, and even chaya, that means you're serving Hashem for a reason, for a motive. Your motives become holy, but they're still your motives. So therefore, there's the payoff. And why would you do something that has no payoff? Why would you do more than necessary? Only from the perspective of Yechidah, which now I am no longer I, because it's not that my nefesh, my ruach, my neshama, or even my chaya. Yechidah means oneness. There's no me as distinct from Hashem, so there's no personal motive for doing these things. So why am I doing whatever that I'm doing? Is it for a payoff? It's not for a payoff anymore. And then automatically, I do more than the letter of the law. I go beyond the letter of the law. So too, when you talk about changing the teva hamidais, not just midais tivium like we spoke about, but teva midaisav, not just changing natural character traits, but changing the very nature of character traits. What does that mean, changing the very nature of character traits? I spoke about it in the very first class. And actually I got an email, somebody asking me if I explained it correctly. And I believe that I did explain it correctly. There may be other ways of explaining it as well, but I believe, based on a footnote here, that I did explain it correctly. That what does it mean that not only you change natural character traits, but you could change the nature of character traits. The nature of character traits is that chassid is chassid and gvura is gvura. Changing the nature of character traits is that chassid becomes gvura and gvura becomes chassid. How is that possible? That's stem cells. That's stem cells. That's from the perspective of Yechidah. So anything can become anything else. So it's not you're stuck with, chesed is chesed, and that's what it is. That's what defines it. That's what makes it chesed. It operates in a certain way, and it has its properties, and that's what makes it chesed. And gvura has different properties that make it gvura. From the perspective of Yechidah, no, all this stuff is flexible. It's in flux, and I can change my nature just like that, because you're going to the core, you're going to the essence, like a stem cell that can become, a heart muscle or anything else you want it to become. Okay? And then the fourth effect that chassidus had on the world, let's go back in the text, b'chlolus ha'olam, the effect on the world at large, chasidus mihisalfus, the waking up from the faint. And that was actually number 1. That was the first of the 4. But here it's the 4th of the 4. Why is this an expression of Yechidah? So it's very simple. Somebody who's conscious and somebody who's unconscious. What's the difference between them? The difference between them is totally external. Whether his soul is shining through his body so that you see him as an awakened person, a conscious person, that's a superficial condition, which is precisely why it changes. A person can be conscious, a person can be unconscious. Those things can change. But who he is, his basic identity, that doesn't change. So that's why a person is who they are, whether they're conscious or they're unconscious. And that's also why they can be roused from their unconscious state back to consciousness, because there's nothing permanent about it. To the contrary, who they are has remained intact even during their unconsciousness. So again, that's the idea of Yechidah. All right, but at any rate, all these four things, none of them are specific novelties on their own. But rather, rather, what's the explanation? Chassidus is a new vitality, like we explained at the beginning, which is a chayas atzmi de bechinas Yechidah, a revelation of Yechidah, again that word. And when that new vitality, that power of Yechidah is revealed in the world, Teres chasidus haklalos aydei kvei kedusus habal shem tov harava magid v'chulu, v'achakach teres chasidus chabad aydei haneshama chadosha kvei kedusus admira zakin bala simcha v'agula. So whether it's the general teachings of Chassidus to the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid, or specifically the school of Chabad, which was innovated by the new soul, a soul that had never been in an incarnation before, and he refers to him as the bala simcha v'agula because it's, as we mentioned in the first class, this is a Yud Tes Kislev address. Yud Tes Kislev is the anniversary of the redemption of the Alter Rebbe. At any rate, when this new light of Yechidah is revealed in the world, what happens? Everything takes on a new vitality. Chayes atzmi, an essential vitality. And therefore, automatically, consequentially, many various different things emerge from that. So the four things we spoke about before, and we called them symptoms, they're all results of Yechidah. They're manifestations of Yechidah. And we were saying before, they're not the essence of Chassidus, but they're a manifestation of the essence. Now we're getting closer to what is that essence. That essence is Yechidah. Okay. Chapter 7. Shall we? Now we're going to introduce a metaphor. And this is a much obviously incomparably better metaphor than what I said before about the stem cells. And this is the metaphor that the Rebbe chose, and which has roots in tradition, and which we're going to use repeatedly throughout this mimer. The metaphor of oil, shemen. Okay, let's go to chapter 7. Gam mitam ze nimshla teres chassidus l'shemen, rozin di rozin. For the same reason, what we were just describing, teres chassidus is likened to oil, specifically olive oil. Usually shemen is shemen zayis, but it could be really physically all oil behaves the same, has the same properties, at least for the purposes of this metaphor. I don't think it makes a difference. And oil is often likened to the level called rozin di rozin, secrets of secrets. It speaks about it in Chassidus and previous Rebbeim, that wine is, nichnas yain yetzesayid. Yain is yud yud nun, wine. Yain yud yud nun is 70. Soid is samach vav dalad, which is also 70. So the secrets of the Torah are compared to wine. But then there's the secrets and the secrets of secrets. So the secrets of Torah is yain. But the secrets of secrets, rozin di rozin, rozin is mysteries or secrets. Rozin di rozin, the secrets of the secrets, that is like oil. And just like the oil floats even on wine. So if the wine is one level, the oil is even higher. Okay. Why? But why? I mean, that's not the only reason, and that's not just because it's higher. Why is shemen the metaphor here? Shemen hu nekudas hatamtzis, a sense shall call davar. Oil is the distilled essence of something. That when you crush it down, you extract its essence. What is it? It's the oil. So whether it's the olive oil, or you can take mineral oil, or peanut oil, or baby oil. No, I'm just joking. That was a joke. But when you distill the essence of something, that's the oil. From this, we are forced to say that the oil is separate from everything. Because if it were specifically connected to one part or another, it wouldn't be able to be extracted from the whole thing. In other words, like you look at an olive, like where's the oil? Is it in that part of the olive? Is it in that part of the? No, it's not like the pit. Where's the pit? It's in the middle. Or where's the meat of the olive? Or where's the pimento? I think they put those in after the fact. I'm not sure. But where's the oil? The oil's just through and through. It's everywhere. So you can't pinpoint. You can't locate it to a particular aspect of the oil. It's the essence of the olive. And being the essence, it's in the whole thing, equally there. Because one of the axioms of an atzmi is it is found within everything and everywhere. So you can't pinpoint where is the oil in the olive. It's throughout the entire olive. Just like you couldn't pinpoint, where is the yechida that animates the universe? Which world is it in? It's in all worlds equally. Or where's the yechida of a person? Where does the yechida express itself? In a person, like nefesh expresses itself through our actions, and ruach through our emotions, and neshama through our intellect, right? But where does yechida express itself? Nowhere, everywhere, right? That's essence. V'davar zeh kechol ha'anyanim shebepnimiyas haTorah mizbata gam b'nigla deTorah. Now, this concept, like every concept that you find in chassidus and Kabbalah, what we call pnimis haTorah, you will find it also in nigla deTorah, in the legalistic, because it's one Torah. Ad ba'halacha lamaisa. In fact, you will even find it in practical halacha. I mean, practical halacha is about as simple and straightforward as you can get. So where do we find this idea illustrated in practical halacha? Mitzad echad Hashem einay misarev b'shar mashkin. On one hand, oil doesn't mix with other liquids. Where do you find that? You find that in the laws of purity and impurity. There's a whole machlekes about the ritual purity of wine. And there's oil floating on top of the wine. So if somebody who is ritually impure touches the oil, which is floating on the top, does that affect the wine? So one opinion in the Mishnah is that it only affects the oil because the oil doesn't mix with the wine. And then another opinion, which is Rabbi Yechidah ben Nuri, says that no, it also contaminates the wine because they're connected. But even according to his opinion, they don't mix. They touch, but they don't mix. So on one hand, oil doesn't mix with any other liquid. On the other hand, it permeates everything. You ever seen the bottom of a pizza box? You see when oil touches something, it goes through and through. And you have this in kashrus. I remember when I learned smicha, we had to learn about what happens when, like basa b'cholav, let's say, when things touch. Well, if you have fat involved, which fat is oil, then the permeation of the flavor is all the way through. Because when there's oil, it goes all the way through and through. So on one hand, it detaches and doesn't mix with anything else. On the other hand, it permeates all the way through and through. It's a little bit paradoxical. Just the physical properties of oil. Therefore, we've chosen this as a metaphor. We compare chassidus to oil. Because chassidus also has these two paradoxical properties. Mitzad inyano atzmi, eine misarev b'shum davar. On one hand, because it's an atzmi, it's an essence, it doesn't mix with anything else, it retains its essence, its identity. Atzim nekudas achai shelamayla mispashtos. Or another way of saying that is, it is the essence of vitality of the world, and not the flowing forth or the glowing or the spreading forth of the vitality. We spoke about that last week. It is it is the essence of the vitality. And it doesn't mix with anything else. It is what it is. It is pure. On the other hand, it permeates through and through everything. So on one hand, it's always what it is, and it doesn't lose its identity, like oil that remains separate. On the other hand, it permeates everything else and goes through and through it, like oil which penetrates. So we have this interesting paradox of an essence. The essence which is both separate and permeating. I'll just leave you with a thought. The Jewish people are often compared to oil for this reason as well. Not just because when you crush us, like the olive, so the good stuff comes out. Although the Rebbe mentions that here in the footnotes here, that after Yud-Tes Kislev, after the Alter Rebbe had been persecuted, so then the good stuff came out. But the Jews are interesting. On one hand, you can't assimilate the Jews. It just doesn't work. Even when the Jews themselves try to assimilate, it never works. So we're always separate. On the other hand, there's nothing that goes on in the world that the Jews aren't part of, which is what leads to some of the conspiracy theories about Jews. But it's really just the fact that Jews are always involved in being movers and shakers, and whatever's going on in the world, for good or whatever, Jews are always, have a hand in it. So, that's like oil. That on one hand it's separate from everything, on the other hand it's permeated and penetrates everything. Okay, that is the end of chapter 7. Emir Hashem will continue next week. Good night.